This is a show about jewelry, why we wear it, why it matters, how it's made, and what it means. I'm Alex D, and I turn cannabis into gold. I make mind-blowing jewelry in gold, silver, and platinum from cannabis plants here in Canada for stage, screen, for people who want to rock crazy jewelry. I'm the Cannabis Goldsmith. You're going to hear a bit of traffic noise this morning because I am recording this today, Wednesday, the day of, and I'm recording it at rush hour here in the country, which means there'll be like tractors going by, maybe a truck every so often. So I hope you don't mind. Anyway, this week's episode is about publishing. Oh man. I'm writing a column in a local paper, in a local magazine. I can't believe it. Like, I was asked to write this column in this new arts magazine that's started up in our area of southeastern Ontario here called The Fish Wrapper. It's a newsprint magazine that started up by the couple that own the art store in downtown Brockville. There's a beautiful art store called Medium Effort. And when I first arrived in the area here in the Thousand Islands area. When I first moved here, I moved here last year, over a year ago. I booked into an Airbnb so I could explore a bit just to get the lay of the land. And I went to this Airbnb in the nearby town of Brockville. And the first day I walked downtown and I was kind of wondering whether I'd made a huge mistake. Did I make a huge mistake coming here? You know, was this going to be okay? Would I be able to do work? Would I be able to survive in this thing? You know, I'm an old guy, but I've been around the block a few times, so I can recover from stuff usually, and I can stand up for myself usually. But it's always weird going into a new area when you don't know anybody at all. Nobody are establishing a new home. Or if you're going to a new job somewhere, you have to start from zero, basically. So here I was at this Airbnb, which was this stone house. It was like massive stone house with ancient, like 1800s masonry. In Brockville, Ontario, you have to go to Brockville just to look at the houses there. They're insane. They're crazy big mansions, like from the 1800s with stone and decorative, like brick, everything. It seems they went all out on the art and design of these huge homes, and they're still there today, and you can see them. It's just walking down the main street, just outside the core, you'll see these houses, and they're just gorgeous. So anyway, where was I? Oh yes, I was walking down from my stone Airbnb that I was staying in, and just to explore and get ready to move into the house. And the first concern I had was, you know, my new place has a wood stove for heat. It didn't have or any other kind of heat. So I'm coming from a place in Toronto where you just turn the thermostat on and it's, you know, 70 degrees or 20 C or whatever. It's that easy. And in the summer you can turn it down to keep the temperature lower, and the air conditioning will cut in. Well, I have none of that, right? I have a wood stove. And the thing, I was thinking, would I be able to even survive with this thing heating in Canadian winters, which can get pretty severe, let me tell you. If you've listened to the early episodes of this podcast, like in 10 weeks, the temperature has gone from minus 32 to where it is now. It's like 20 degrees C. It's like there's a big range of temperatures in Canada. So anyway, I had no idea whether the wood stove would even keep me alive. So I'm walk downtown, down the main street, King Street in Brockville. I'm walking down the road, and people are coming towards me on the sidewalk, nodding and smiling and saying hello. And this doesn't happen in Toronto. It does not. In fact, people will look away from you in Toronto, or they'll look at their feet, or they'll look up at the sky. They'll look at every other place except in your eyes, right, or at your face when you approach somebody on the street. Because in Toronto, Like you're actually looking at them, but you're side eye, right? You're pretending not to look at what's coming at you, but you're fully aware just in case somebody leaps out and like attacks you. This is what Toronto is like. It's like living there now. It's so it's not conducive to art, and that's why I left. So anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, walking down King Street, and I was thinking about the wood stove, and these people are coming towards me, saying hello and nodding. I'm thinking, should I say hello back? What do I do? I mean, this is in Toronto. You never do this. So I responded, hey, how's it going? And by the time I got to the first shop, three people had already said hello to me, and I was like, this is amazing. This is great. I could get used to this. Anyway, so I found a used bookstore, and the sign of a good town is a good used bookstore. Really. A good used bookstore can save your life. You can walk in there, browse, sit on the floor, like look at all kinds of books. And if it's a good used bookstore, it'll have a wide range of stuff for everybody. And sure enough, I walked in. The first book I saw was a book on how to heat your home with a wood stove. Tiny little, I don't know, maybe 50 pages. Very old, probably the 1980s or whatever. How to heat your home with a wood stove. So I bought it. It was like $2 or something. That book kept me alive during the winter. I learned everything I needed to know about firewood, about drying firewood, stacking it, cleaning wood stoves. I learned absolutely everything from this $2 book that I picked up at the used bookstore. Now, I'm still walking. This is the first day now, right? And I'm still walking down the road. In a post-pandemic Brockville, I was shocked, literally shocked that there was retail still open. Because in Toronto, in the core, when I left, it was bad. Like 10% maybe of the businesses were open. And the rest were shut, either bankrupt, closed, gone, not going to even bother to reopen. It was bleak. But here, strangely, there were shops still open. And I mean, I'm not talking chain brands like Zara or whatever, but small, independent, like the used bookstore. There were some little clothing stores. There were little, just small stores, but they were open. And this is important, in my opinion. Now, anyway. Is important to have a retail sector in a small town, because they're all gone, right? Everywhere in North America, they've all been destroyed by Amazon and Walmart and these big stores just outside the downtown cores that have sucked all the customers away. So I was so pleased to see stores open in Brockville. Anyway, I was walking down King Street. Now, this was last year, kind of in April, I suppose. And it was cold and wet and horrible and sleety. But, I was kind of optimistic because now I had my wood stove book and I could actually apply and learn how to keep myself alive over the winter. But anyway, I kept walking and I found this store, Medium Effort. And it was an art store, like an art store you would see in New York or Toronto or Montreal. It was like a big city art store, but independently owned. And in this downtown core, I was like shocked, right? This is great. Like, I have an art store, like within a short drive where I can get stuff like paper and drawing pens and weird glues and like cardboard if I need that, like special kinds of like blades to cut stuff and oh, this is just fantastic. So I walked in and I believe there was a young woman working there, a woman named Kathleen, and she was one of the owners. And I met Tim and Kathleen, who owned the store. I introduced myself. Look, I said, I'm a jewelry designer. I just moved into this area and I don't know anybody. I just thought I'd introduce myself. We immediately, they were like the first people I knew in the area. So Tim, the guy, told me at the time, I'd pop in maybe once a month just to say hello, or even less frequently, really. Just if I was in Brockville, I would just walk past and walk into the store and say hello to either Tim or Kathleen. And then Tim told me once he was going to start an arts magazine in the area. He said, like like the alternative weeklies you used to get in the big cities, the newsprint, just for the arts community in Brockville and surrounding areas, Prescott, I guess all the way up to Merrickville, maybe Gananoque, and all these towns you've never heard of in southern Ontario, southeastern Ontario, near Cornwall. And that's the biggest one town nearby, I think. But in this area, it's very farmy, and along the river, it's very kind of like the Ozarks. If you're in the States listening to this, it looks like the Ozarks a lot, right? Or if you've seen the show The Ozarks, it's sort of the rivery, landy kind of vibe of this place is like that, right? But the thing is, artists are spread out all around. Like I talked about last week with the Narwhal Tusk episode, there was an artist that I discovered living deep in the forest near Perth. Like, there are artists like that all over this area, tucked away, doing creative work, right? Like me. Like I'm designing jewelry and plastics and waxes and stuff that are later cast in precious metal in Toronto. Like, so, I mean, there's piles of us hidden in these little nooks and crannies and tucked away in the forest and on farms, and maybe we're not. Maybe some of us are not commercial artists, commercially successful, like or even commercially, even looking to do that, right? Maybe we're just looking to make art. But there's so many of us tucked away. And Tim said, you know what, there needs to be a magazine for this, and I'm going to start an arts magazine, and we're gonna reach these people. I had told him that, first off, I was going to say, don't do it. Don't do it, because it's so fucking hard. It's so hard to do. Because you see, I did the same thing. Like in 1993, I started Tribe, which was like a community magazine, newsprint for the country, for Canada, for DJ culture and rave culture and music, DJ music, right? And nobody was even talking about that. So I was looking around and I thought, man, there needs to be a magazine for this. I'm going to start one. So I did it in 93. So in a second, when he said to me, okay, I'm going to start a newsprint magazine, I was going to say, don't do it, because you have no idea. But I didn't tell him. You know what? Why? First off, even if I told him, I think he would have gone ahead and done it anyway, which was like me. I would have gone ahead and done it anyway. And because it's something you have to do, publishing. If you're a publisher, you have to publish. There's something about it that you have to. What publishing is essentially, if you're a self-publisher, you have work that you want to put an imprint on, you want to put a date, you want to get it out into society. You want to, it's like a benchmark. It's like those things you see in the sidewalk when you're walking down the sidewalk, those brass circles in the road that are a map point, that are not going anywhere. They're staying there so that when the surveyor comes, he can like stick his gizmo on top of it and know he's exactly in that position, and he can measure other positions from it. Now this is publishing. This is what a publisher does. A publisher launches a bit of media and then embeds it into the sidewalk where it won't move, and there it is, right? So it's a reference point for people of the future and people of the present to talk about, to get other ideas, and maybe to launch out in other directions, or to measure where they are in culture from looking at these benchmarks. And that's what publishing does, whether the magazine is about gardening or art or music or whatever. And that's not. Now I'm starting to sound a bit sad, because I just thought how the magazines are gone, right? They're all gone now. I mean, you see them if you go into even a Walmart will have a magazine section now, and you just look at it and it just, well, why would you even buy any of them, right? Like, that's what I think when I look at them. They all look the same. They're just flyers, basically. They're not what magazines once were. They're not what community magazines are, okay? So anyway, Tim and Kathleen decided to launch this magazine, and they did. And when I was down in the at their store, I was talking to them about it. They asked me to write. Said, "Why don't you write a column for it?" And oh man, I was going to say no at first, because I've got my hands full here. I've just set up this design workshop. I always think that I'm behind, but I'm not really behind. But this is how I motivate myself. Oh, the deadline's coming. I gotta do this, gotta do that. So I'm always like forcing myself forward like that, right? Deadlines. Publishing, man. Anyway, so he asked me, "Why don't you write a column?" And I thought, okay, I'll do it. I'll write a column. Let's keep it simple. I'll call it the Cannabis Goldsmith, because like this podcast, it doesn't involve much thinking. I just can just say, oh, Cannabis Goldsmith column, Cannabis Goldsmith podcast. So it's going to be, the column will be a bit different. It's going to be more locally focused instead of this one, which is more internationally kind of general focused for artists. But the printed column is going to be more about local. I'm going to tune it, I think, towards this magazine that Tim and Kathleen put out. It's called The Fish Wrapper. I guess the first column I'm going to be in is the next issue, in the June issue, which I think is issue 5. So they've already published 5 issues, which is like a major achievement for a small press, for a small publication. And I think it's, as it gets more well known and it reaches all these artists hiding in little forests and farms all around the area, it's going to be great. And I think it'll grow and become just a great connecting vehicle for the artists in the community. So my column in it is going to be about art, the practical aspects of it. I thought I would talk about some of the stuff I talk about here, like AI. I'm going to do a bit on AI, about how artists can use AI to do the stuff that artists don't want to do anyway, right? Like, why stress out and why diminish your creative output because you're so freaked out about building web pages or whatever? You can let AI build the web pages, and then you can focus on making your pottery or whatever. So I want to talk about shit like that in the column. It's not a lot, like on a podcast, it's great. I can just ramble on about this stuff, but in a column, you're constrained, right? Like I have a word limit. I can't go above. It's really hard to say stuff in few words. It's so difficult. And to make it readable. Like, I mean, you can see if any of you are using AI now, using the Chat GPT, Bing chat tools or whatever, you can see, I mean, if you write a nice paragraph and you put it in there and tell it to clean it up, you don't know what you're going to get back. And what you usually get back is terrible. It's like a brochure. It's just sad, right? So anyway, I write these columns myself, and I'm trying to write them to the way the artist would read them, because we're artists and we're weird, right? We think visually. So I'm going to try and inject as much visual metaphor and stuff into the column so that artists might understand it better. My hat goes off to Tim and Kathleen for launching this new magazine. Man, it's hard to do, and they're doing it. They're already at issue 5. Good for you, and I'll help any way I can. I think I'm going to take a few copies and bring them out to the library, the local library in the community here, and ask them if I can put them there. I'm sure they'll agree. And this is great. I'm just so excited about this. Anyway, what else is going on? Last week I told you about I was going to pitch the Canadian Jewelers Association about this idea I have is to work on the Juno Awards, to try and work with the people who do the Juno Awards to jack up the visual aspects of it a bit with some cool jewelry from Canadian jewelers. So anyway, my pitch to them last week was, okay, let me approach the Juno people and see if we can work on some kind of collaboration where we get Canadian jewelry on the Juno Awards, where it being worn by musicians, by stars. Like, this would be great for everybody. So I didn't even think they'd go for it, because usually associations are quite set in their ways, and they associations, governing bodies, have ways of doing things that they've always done, and that's anything new is really different and usually not considered. So I didn't even think this would be considered. But you know what? I think they've approved it in principle. So what that means is that they're going to give me the blessing to go out and try and work on some kind of collaboration between these two organizations. I haven't even talked to the Juno people yet, but I'm going to try and see what happens. I probably shouldn't even be talking about it here, but this is public. I mean, this is what it's about, right? This is about Canadian jewelry and Canadian music and Canada. It's about getting us out there to the world, right? So I think they'll be interested in the idea. But if not, I will have tried, and that's that. And maybe it wasn't the right time or whatever. That's how I think about these things. I'm not gonna just whatever. If it fails, it fails. Anyway, but I'm going to give it my best shot. And I think this week I'll pitch them a letter and pitch them an email. I'll just inquire and just like drop some ideas on them and see what they say. And then we'll go from there. That's how these things work, Anyway, publishing, fuck, man, it's hard to do, but when it's done, it brings such benefit to communities, like it does. Now, you might think nobody reads print publications anymore. Nobody reads them, but they do read them. People read them. If you're in a coffee shop, there's nothing there. You're on your phone or you're reading the local magazine. There's a certain demographic that I think are going to read printed magazines anyway, and that's the older people. They're going to read them. The young people might not. And you know what? Maybe they could benefit from reading them because they would be able to see art done in different ways, like use it as food for their own ideas and insights and creativity. But anyway, by the very nature of printed publications, they're going to appeal to older people. So older artists maybe, or more established artists maybe, artists who have been doing art for longer. I don't know. You could shape the idea around print and art in different ways. Anyway, there's some really good community magazines. There used to be in Canada. There are none, really, very few anymore. None in this area, except for this, the Fish Wrapper. So I'm totally hyped about writing the first column. My first column is an introduction to what I do, which so I'm explaining that. And then the second one, I'll start getting into artists' tips and ideas. So jewelry making. The podcast is almost over, and I haven't even said a thing about jewelry making. Well, all right. How it's going for the cannabis jewelry? I've got 4 cannabis plants in the ground now. The weather has warmed up sufficiently. It's like the end of May already. Wow. I've put the 4 plants in the ground. Now, these are the plants that are going to provide the leaves, stems, roots, and other parts that I'm going to model and will later be cast in precious metal, jewelry pieces. So this year I'm growing 4 plants, and the 4 plants that I'm growing are Congo, which is an Ace Seeds product, I think. It's a landrace from Africa. And the reason I'm growing it is because I used to live in Africa when I was a boy in the Congo. It's sentimental. So I'm hoping, I have no idea what it'll be like, whether it is even actually from the Congo, I have no idea. But the claim is that the genetics are from the Congo. So anyway, so I'm going to grow that, and that for you people who believe in the sativa, indica kind of labels, it's I guess predominantly sativa. It's a strain that grows wild in the Congo. And I've tried strains in the Congo when I lived there as a kid, right? And maybe this is what I'm trying to recapture. It won't be the same. Who knows? Whatever. I'm using it for making jewelry anyway. So leaves and stuff, which we'll model and make into rings, bracelets, different things from the cannabis plant. So the Congo is the one plant. Another one, African plant I got growing is a KwaZulu-Natal. Now, I lived in KwaZulu-Natal for many years, actually. Again, sentimental. But this is a more hardy plant. And I'm looking at this one for leaves. And it can take colder temperatures, because in KwaZulu-Natal you have a temperature range that can go almost to 0 and sometimes below, to 35 degrees, which is sort of like Canada when you think about it. Now, except we go colder. So I think the plant will do well here, maybe. Again, it's from seed, and I have no idea whether it is actually what it says it is. But that doesn't matter, because I'm looking at the leaves on this plant, and the leaves are nice for they're thin leaves, and they're perfect to make into thinner jewelry pieces. They're not fat like leaves. They're thinner. They have nice characteristics, but they look a bit thin. So like thickness-wise, I mean, they don't have the strength necessary that I need to cast to model them in the resins and waxes that we use to capture the details. I'm hoping as the plant grows, the leaves change and they might thicken up a bit. Or maybe I'll figure out an additive to add to the soil to make the leaves more puffy so that I can capture the details better. So I have 2 more plants in the ground. So we're allowed to grow 4 in Canada. So we have the Congo, the KwaZulu-Natal. I've got a green crack, and the green crack is a Canuck green crack, Canuck seeds green crack. Green. Everyone knows green crack, so look for it. But this is a very good variety for making jewelry pieces that I've found, because the leaves can get huge, but they still have a nice shape and definition to them. They're a little fatter than the previous plant I mentioned, so that is perfect for cuff bracelets and stuff like that. So the green crack is there. And the final one is a Jack Herer. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. And again, from Canuck seeds. And these are not auto flowers, in case you're wondering. These are just photoperiod. And what photoperiod means for cannabis plants, it means that when the number of hours of sunlight hit a certain point, it'll flower. So the plant senses when the fall arrives, because the number of hours of daylight changes. And the plant knows this. And as soon as it hits 12 hours of sunlight and 12 hours of night, it'll go into flower. So that happens sometime in the fall. But until then, it's just going to grow and produce leaves. And that's what I want, because the leaves are what we're using for the work to do these jewelry pieces and make accessories and all these other kind of crazy things. So the jack is for me too, because I use it for my arthritis. It allows me to do work, and it doesn't cloud my brain, so that I can focus on designs and podcasting and writing columns and all this other stuff. It seems to be a variety that works well for my arthritis pain in my knees and hip and all the other places that it's spreading to, but it keeps that at bay so that I can do work. So I like the jack. The jack is good. And that is, the Jack Herer plant is going to be hopefully a huge motherfucker. These things can grow big, right? Like 20 foot tall. So I'm going for size. I'm going to try and grow the biggest plant I can grow to get the biggest leaf size, to get huge, thick trunk from the plant that I can later make into maybe a pipe or a bong or something. I don't know, or a vase, like cast it in silver, do something really insane, or slice it up if the trunk gets thick enough to slice it into rings and make bracelets out of it. Like I'm going to do crazy shit like this out of this plant. So anyway, so that's my 4 plants this year in the ground and growing right now. And they seem to be okay so far, crossing my fingers, because it's farming. You never know, right? Like plants, you never know. We could have a frost and they could die or whatever. Anyway, I'm crossing my fingers and hoping for the best. Publishing. In your little town, you might have a newsprint. You might have a newsprint monthly still in circulation. Read it. Grab it. Read it. You have no idea how much work goes into making it. You have no idea, like enormous amounts of personal love, labor are going into these magazines by their publishers. Support them if you can, and read them. Read them, they're free. Read them. Get off the internet, even for 5 minutes, and read your local publisher's work. The Cannabis Goldsmith is produced by Tribe Communications, Inc. in the Thousand Islands area of Ontario, Canada. You can see what we do at tribe.ca. Send us an email, alexd@cannabisgoldsmith.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week on the Cannabis Goldsmith.